Hello and welcome to Please Don't Take This Personally, the podcast revolution where women and the men who love and support us claim our agency to power that's already ours by birthright. Here we challenge those please don't take this personally moments that are designed to shut us down and maintain the status quo. And while this podcast is absolutely for everyone, I am focusing on empowering women because the numbers do not lie. Women aren't lacking talent, ambition, or brilliance, but the confidence gap, gender-based violence, workplace inequities, and the sheer lack of global representation, those numbers, they tell us a really different story. And we are not the problem, but we are the solution. And in this podcast, it's an invitation to fuel the conversations we need to have, to break down the barriers we didn't build, and to finally move towards safety and equity together. So whether you are a shout it out from the rooftops advocate or a silent listener taking it all in, welcome. There is room for you right here. So let's stop taking things personally and start taking action. This week's episode is a whole new look at imposter syndrome. And I am your host, Lynn Ferrari, and I am recovered from imposter syndrome. I believe that imposter syndrome is just another form of please don't take this personally. It's the dysfunctional system's voice, not yours, telling you you are not enough. You got lucky, and you don't deserve that seat at the table. And just like every other please don't take this personally moment, when we let it slide and we reinforce the very systems that created it, we reinforce that we're participants instead of equals players in society. So before we dive into imposter syndrome and why it actually matters a heck of a lot, let me talk more about the podcast title and why I believe the please don't take this personally mindset and this work is so important to understand and challenge for us to achieve a balanced world. Okay, please don't take this personally statements and moments shape reality. They are not small and they are not personal. They're systematic. And calling them out isn't about complaining. It's about naming the truth so we can change it. There are the blatant ones that are really easy to see, right? Women get shut down, ideas get stolen and repackaged, or interrupted, dismissed, talked over. But the subtle ones are actually more common and equally as insidious. And every time we stay silent, we are confirming. You make the rules, we react. Let me share two of my own recently. One personal, one professional. Recently, I was on a ski trip with my husband and my beautiful sister friend and her husband in Whistler, British Columbia. Really fabulous resort. And the Olympics were held there many years ago. So there's a big Olympic sign there. And there were a group of young men and they were taking turns taking the group picture. So I asked them, hey, would you like us to take your picture? And they said yes. And when they all got together, they decided that when we said, okay, 1, 2, 3, that they would put their hands at their crotch and throw their hips out to show us their big fat penises. So that's a please don't take it personally moment. That's, oh, don't take it personally. We're just being boys. But instead of taking it personally, I took action and I shared with them that I would not be taking that photo, that it was highly inappropriate. It was offensive to me as well. And that I'm really certain that most women would not find that welcoming. And here in this moment is the thing. They actually said they were sorry. So the thing is, in some cases, people just get away with crap until someone says, heck no. So that was the personal one. Professionally, I have a contract with a client and I have been experiencing a lot of disrespect and a lot of bullying in this one particular area. So much so that I really was not having a good time and it was impacting my health. So instead of taking it personally and trudging through and taking it and making sure and why are they doing this, I simply let the client know what was happening. And in order for me to finish the contract, we needed to rescope the terms of who I engaged with and not. And really, in the end, I ended up minimizing the contract, meaning taking a couple of months off of it because it wasn't helpful. So I did not take it personally. I took action. And every time we notice, name it, and push back on these moments, we chip away at a broken system. And we've changed systems in the past by doing exactly this. So we do not smoke in buildings anymore because people said no. We don't do frontal lobotomies anymore because people said this is unacceptable. And please don't take this personally moments still exist because we haven't addressed them enough and taken specific action. A lot of the time we're waiting for a system to change, but we are the change. So every time we say heck no to a please don't take this personally moment, we shift the game. And every time we take action, we create a new norm. Because as we do this, and every day, one day at a time, this won't be a conversation anymore. And that is the world we're building. All right. I talked about a whole new view on imposter syndrome. So why the hickety heck should you care about imposter syndrome as a world-changing event? Because it is not just a personal struggle. It is a massive, overlooked lever for change. It is everywhere, affecting women, men, and entire systems, which gives us a unique opportunity if we recognize it for what it is, which is manufactured doubt. And we can dismantle it in real time. And when we do, we don't just build confidence, we become more active players in the power dynamics, creating a world where equity and safety are not ideals, they are the reality. Because women who believe that they do not deserve better don't ask for better. And that affects everyone from our place in society to medical care and personal safety. So here are some facts and why you should care. Women are 24% less likely to receive mentorship or sponsorship from senior leaders, so the cycle of exclusion continues. Globally, only nine out of 190 heads of state are women. So the power structures that are shaping our world and policy and culture continue to be male dominated. But let's take this out of the corporate walls. So women who lack confidence are highly unlikely to report harassment, abuse, or discrimination. Girls who struggle with self-worth are more likely to be targeted by predators, traffickers, and be in exploitative relationships. And I have got to tell you, these numbers are staggering. Over the past decade alone, the number of human trafficking victims identified worldwide has more than quadrupled, according to the National Human Trafficking Hotline in the United States. Take that in. When women don't feel empowered to take up their space, they don't push for policies that protect us, protect our reproductive rights, safety, and equity. So imposter syndrome is a societal issue, a safety issue, and a health and wellness issue. And the more we shrink, the more power and autonomy we give away. So let's start with what I call the definition disconnect, the myth of the imposter. This was a game changer for me. The term imposter refers to someone who knowingly deceives others, a con artist, a fraud. Is that what you are doing? Hell no. No. Imposters fake it to take it. They're a fraud. But imposter syndrome is that you feel like a fraud even when it is 100% inaccurate. Let me say that again. You feel like a fraud even when it's 100% inaccurate. So the term imposter syndrome was actually coined in 1978 by psychologists Dr. Pauline Clance and Dr. Suzanne Imes. And their research found that high-achieving women, despite their accomplishments, felt like frauds and attributed their success to luck rather than ability. So let's be clear, you are not a fraud. Society and workplaces, leadership models, power dynamics, all of this designed by men over history for men. That's not an opinion, it is a fact. And when women, along with other historically excluded voices, started showing up in force, the culture didn't evolve. It actually doubled down. I jest from my human resource background that we need a change management plan. But instead of adapting, it reinforced the message, you do not belong. And unfortunately, too many of us believed it, including me. So as women, we were allowed in, right? But we were not welcomed as equals. And the result is that we build it was like a built-in inequity that made us feel like outsiders in our own success. And this had a lot of help from cultural messaging. We've had impossible beauty standards to the do-it-all myth, and media has fed us a relentless stream of expectations that we must be perfect. So there was an ad that came out in 1980, and it went like this. You can bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, and never ever let him forget he's a man, 'cause I'm a woman. Okay, that was a perfume commercial. The translation, do everything and do it flawlessly, ladies. And as I mentioned a little earlier, when women flooded to the workforce, we were not given full membership. We were expected to assimilate. We had to wear little bow ties and follow the rules and really sanitize anything that made us look or behave or speak like women. And I was there in the 80s, so I can confirm that. The village that we enjoy, the collaboration, the support systems that have worked for us, we had to abandon them. And instead, we were forced into competition. Who's thinner, who's sharper, who's speaking better in meetings? And it fueled a cycle of self-doubt and inadequacy. We are still living in the legacy of the 1980s cutthroat, emotionally closed leadership, where vulnerability is seen as weakness and collaboration lacks an edge. And while the never let them see you sweat culture affects all genders, the recent stat is that 70% of people experience imposter syndrome. For women, it's compounded by systemic inequities and extra barriers, making it so much more insidious for us. So the bottom line is that this system was not built for us, and we are not the problem, but we are the ones who can rewrite the rules by saying no to please don't take it personally moments and imposter syndrome, and taking action. Okay, here is my imposter syndrome story. So I grew up in Queens, New York, raised by blue-collar Italian Catholic parents who loved me a lot. But no one in my family thought I'd be a powerhouse in business. In fact, I was told the opposite. Be a secretary and get married. That is your role. And that is what I did. But I always felt something bigger inside of me, and I had something to say. And yet my surroundings and even some of my family made it really clear that that is not true. So you just stay in your lane, missy. There was no talk of climbing ladders or breaking ceilings, just knowing my place as a woman in the world. And for a long time, I believed them. And I stayed within those limits, capable but contained. And that's where the imposter syndrome first took hold for me, starting from my humble beginnings as a secretary, working up that proverbial ladder. That voice still whispered to me. In every room, I looked around at people with degrees and titles and experience, and I had this voice in my head that would say, you don't belong here. But my biggest one was, they will figure you out. And here's what's wild. I was good, and I am good at what I do, like really good, even as a secretary. I'd listen to executives in meetings and think, wait, they believe that nonsense? That's it? That's all they've got? And yet I still felt like a fraud because in the early 80s, women weren't helping each other. So I didn't have a posse to help me out there. And I was surrounded by people, especially other women, who saw my intelligence without a degree as a threat and my ability to read the room and ask the right questions and my breath of fresh air. It was so not welcome. And instead of celebrating it, it was shut down. And in some cases, I was told directly, not just subtly, you will never get anywhere. And that was by an executive woman in the 80s. So I made a choice. I paid attention. I went to night school. I got certifications, and I said yes to opportunities even when I was so scared. I found really great mentors and I listened to them and I did the work. And over time, I saw the truth that I was just as worthy to be there, sometimes even smarter than the people who fueled the belief that I was an imposter. And one day, I remember sitting in a meeting, watching mostly men go back and forth, throwing around jargon, and they were literally making stuff up. And I thought, wait a minute, that's it? How did you get to those numbers? And I even asked my male boss, who I really, really respect and is still very much a part of my life, how did you get to those numbers? And he acknowledged that it was all made up. Wait, what? So you're acknowledging it, and yet there's a whole group of people that are agreeing just to agree, and we are made to feel like imposters. No, that was a turning point for me. So I started practicing. I studied the women I admired. For me, Leslie Stahl and Barbara Walters were pioneers of journalism. And I know I'm dating myself with those examples, but I would literally watch them and stand in front of the mirror and pretend to deliver the news. This is 60 Minutes with Andy Rooney when we return. I figured if I was gonna feel like an imposter, I'd model the best until I became the best. And even as I grew in my career, that voice did not disappear overnight. I would go to conferences and events, and I would find myself feeling jealous or inadequate. And my narrative in my head was, well, why not me? I know just as much. But over time, I kept doing the work. And in fact, just last week, I was at a TED Talk. Big names, right? Great speakers, tons of insights. And I walked away thinking, I didn't hear a single thing here that I haven't already mastered. And not because they were not great talks, they were, but because I finally saw myself clearly and I am their equal. I am not an imposter. Do I still feel inadequate sometimes? Of course, but I don't believe the feeling that I'm an imposter. I look at the evidence and then I practice my tools. So here is the good news. Imposter syndrome is a lie, and you can break it. Imposter syndrome isn't about your ability. It's about the conditioning we've absorbed and its manufactured doubt. The systems that have told us over and over that we're not enough. But when you finally see the truth, when you realize that you do not need permission, that you already belong, that this was all a hoax, that's when everything changes. So if you're waiting for someone to tell you that you're enough, please let me have the honors of doing it. You already are. You always have been. The good news is there are absolutely actions that you can take to begin to heal and thrive past imposter syndrome. All right, let's talk about what to do when imposter syndrome shows up, because this isn't just about thinking positively. This is about retraining your brain, leveraging your community, and taking real action. So the first move is notice it. Imposter syndrome has a physical presence. Where does it hit you? For me, it's in my chest, like right there, that tight, anxious feeling like I am so about to be found out. But here's the thing, just because it feels real does not mean it is true. You learned to feel that way, and you can unlearn it. You feel like an imposter. That is not the same as being one, right? And your brain is wired for change. Thank you, neuroplasticity. And over time, you will retrain it to separate fact from fiction. So I have a great tool. It's by a woman named Byron Katie, and it's called Is It True Framework. And I'll drop the link in the show notes, of course. It's simple and game changing. It goes like this. First, you ask yourself, is it true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? How do you react when you believe that it's true, but it's not? And who would you be without that thought? And I have to be really real with you. This work is hard. It's difficult. It is not a one and done fix. In my experience, it's a lifetime process and practice. And even as I sit here taping this today, I am way deep in my own battle with a feeling of shame over something I logically know do not need to feel shamed about. But here I am, feeling it anyway, because I am human. I made a mistake and I owned it. And yet, that old conditioning is screaming at me. It is so easy to say, don't believe everything you feel. But actually living that, that's the next level of inner work. So I want you to know that I am practicing this right alongside of you. I'm reminding myself that this feeling is not a truth. It's just a relic of past conditioning, and I can have compassion for that part of myself. And despite how awful it feels in my body, I am choosing to move forward anyway. And that awful feeling in your body, that's actually how I know it's working, because I'm taking a new path and my brain is freaking out a little bit. Wrong direction. We don't know this way. Danger, danger. That's how it feels in my body. But that's exactly the point. This stuff is real. It is messy. It is uncomfortable, and it will challenge every part of you. But the reward, standing firm in who you are with absolute conviction, that is worth every ounce of discomfort. That much I promise you. Okay, that's about you, right? So confidence grows in community, not in isolation, meaning it's very difficult to do this alone. So find your team, someone who's ahead of you who's been there, someone walking alongside you, and a supporter, that cheerleader, that person who reminds you who the hickety heck you are. Okay, let's talk about how to actually tackle imposter syndrome, because let's be clear, it's not going anywhere unless we actively disrupt it. First, bring people in. Tell your trusted circle what you are working on. Do not sit in silence, spinning in your own head. Let them know what's coming up, a big meeting, a major moment, so they can help ground you before you step into a situation like it. Think of it as a pre-flight checklist. Talk it through, get your head right, and set yourself up to be strong. You might even want to create a signal when somebody else is in the room with you and they see you exhibiting imposter syndrome, when you're suddenly doubting every skill you have and you're questioning why you're even in the room. And maybe it's a word, maybe it's a tap on the shoulder, maybe it's a quick text that says, hey, you belong here. Anything that's going to connect with you to snap you out of that moment. And make it a regular thing. Meet up, check in, share what's really going on in that brain of yours. Say your fears out loud. The lies you are telling yourself about why you don't deserve the seat you have actually earned, because there is immense power in vulnerability. And once those thoughts are in the open, they lose their grip. And when you realize you're not the only one feeling this way, that's when things shift and there is safety in numbers, right? Me too. I feel that way too. Those words change everything, because now you're not alone and neither are they. The way to stop feeling like an imposter is to stop thinking like one. Remember that this is not about wishful thinking. This is about retelling your story to yourself accurately so you can show up and be your best self. So in my consulting work, I have come up with a program on imposter syndrome, and I focus on what I call the 4 Ps: prepare, practice, pause, and participate. So prepare. Build your evidence bank. Imposter syndrome thrives on feelings over facts. So when your doubt creeps in, have your receipts ready. Write down your wins, the promotions, the moments you nailed it, the compliments you brushed off, the things you are proud of, and read it out loud to yourself often. Guaranteed, if you read this out loud and see it as someone else, you would not even question their amazingness. So why not award yourself the same compassion and consideration? And keep all of these receipts visible. Put a note on your phone, a folder in your email, somewhere where you're going to pull it up when that imposter voice starts whispering. And remind yourself that just because I feel this way does not mean it is true. The second P is practice, because confidence is a muscle. You do not get a yoga body by sitting on the couch. You do not learn to swim by avoiding the water, no matter how many books you may read on swimming. Confidence works the same way, and you have to practice. So think of a moment where doubt or a person shut you down. What do you wish you had said or done? Write it down, and then practice those scenarios and write as many of them as applicable to you. Have a list prepared of responses that would be appropriate, literally, so you can, and then say them out loud. Stand in front of your mirror and rehearse it. If you need some amazing ones, I put the link to Jefferson Fisher, as he is masterful at offering practical terms and techniques that you can use and practice. And role play with a trusted friend, because your brain needs to experience it over and over and over to rewrite the script. So make the time to practice and do it consistently. Another resource is Dr. Valerie Young, a leading expert on imposter syndrome. She has an amazing TED Talk. Her reframe and rename strategy flips self-doubt into trust. I love her work. So she says things like, instead of, I don't know enough, say, I'm learning and I know how to figure things out. This one's my favorite. Whenever someone says, oh, I just got lucky, I'm really blessed. And yes, we're lucky and we're blessed, but that's not why you're at the table, at least not in whole. Instead, you say, I worked hard, I showed up, and I delivered, and that is why I'm here. There's a lot of things that you can say. And again, practice, practice, practice. All right, the third P is pause. Hold your ground, own the room. Personally or professionally, whatever the situation. When doubt creeps in, those feelings catch it. Remember the body, where is this living? That's cue for, okay, I am rerunning a narrative that is not accurate. Do not spiral. You do not need to rush to explain yourself either. You can just pause. There is a misunderstanding that just because someone asks you a question that you must immediately respond and you must have everything ready. But that is not accurate. Before you react, you can ask yourself, is that actually true? Or is it a feeling? What's the best move here? Is there someone in the room who would have my back? How does that play into what I'm willing to say or not say? Because you do not have to respond to everything in real time. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is, curious, let me think about that. They don't have to know you're freaking out inside or you're doubting yourself. All they will see is you are owning your place, staying calm, confident, and you are clear under pressure, regardless of how you feel. And this is so important. So instead of falling into self-doubt, try, that's an interesting take. What makes you say that? Or let me think about that and get back to you. And this flips the script. So instead of defending yourself, you put the pressure back where it belongs, on them. And you stay in control and you hold your place and space. This one was one of the hardest for me to learn because I was trained both by trauma and the cutthroat workplace culture of the 80s to fight, 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 to always have something to say. Silence, that felt like losing. And sometimes it does still feel that way, even though I will choose it because I know that it is the path to getting me where I want to go. But over time, I did realize the immense power in pausing. And now I actually find it kind of fun because I have something that they don't know, right? There's something really powerful about not rushing to fill the space and taking that breath and letting the moment unfold. One of the best resources for mastering this is Chris Voss and the Black Swan Group. Again, in the show notes. His work is centered on negotiation. In fact, I believe he was a previous CIA or FBI negotiator, but the techniques that they teach go so far beyond deal making and negotiation, and they are pure gold for handling tough conversations, knowing when to engage, and maybe most importantly, knowing when the smartest move is to say nothing at all. And I am here to tell you, I have tested these, my friends and colleagues have tested these, and they work. So if you want to get better at the art of the pause, check out his reels, TED Talks, or anything Black Swan puts out. It's really a game changer. The last P is participate. All right, if you want to break the imposter syndrome, there is one non-negotiable. You have to participate. That does not always mean being the loudest voice in the room or taking the biggest swing, but sometimes participation is simply showing up differently. It's observing with intention, maybe you're reading the room, and you're learning what's the smart move. But one thing is certain, sitting it out entirely, that is not an option. So here's a couple of things you can think about and do on your terms. So the very first one is drop the imposter label. Stop calling it imposter syndrome. Name it for what it really is. Manufactured doubt, conditioned by a system that benefits from your doubt, that was never made for us. It's simply the gap between where you are and where you are made to feel. And you can rewrite your script. The lies you are telling yourself, you write them down and you call them out and you replace them with the truth. And be kind to yourself, but be relentless and keep practicing. And take the next step, whatever that is for you. So speaking up when you normally wouldn't, asking a question, sharing your perspective, making the play you used to hesitate on, whatever that may be, take the next step and stay in the game, because growth isn't about confidence. It's about movement. It's about keep going, keep stretching. And if you can or want to, and if you can, if you're up to it, be a mentor. This cycle of self-doubt, we inherited it for generations. So let's stop it with us and start modeling different behaviors. And here's the biggest mind shift to me. Fear does not mean stop. Fear means pay attention. Assess the situation to make your best move. Be clear, danger is real. Fear is learned, and we have been conditioned to fear owning our space, using our voice, stepping up. But here's the truth. Every time you do it anyway, despite the fear, despite the doubt, you're proving something powerful to yourself, that you can do it, and your brain rewires. And so the next time it's going to be just a little less uncomfortable. And you've practiced, you have people in your corner, and you are not alone. So get in the game, participate, because you already belong here. And this, my podcast revolutioner friends, is how you stop feeling like an imposter and start owning that you belong. Imposter syndrome feels real, but feeling something, as we said, isn't the same as being it, and that distinction is everything. So next time that voice sneaks in, the one whispering or sometimes screaming that you are going to be found out, that you do not deserve the space you actually earned, I want you to hear mine louder. You do, you are, and you belong, and that starts with you. So keep practicing, keep showing up, be kind to yourself, because wiring and rewiring decades, hell, generations of conditioning, it takes time, but it is possible. Keep practicing, keep showing up, be kind to yourself, because rewiring decades, hell, generations of conditioning, it takes time, but it is possible. And you are not doing this alone. There is access to information at a time in our history like never before. There are videos, therapy, group events, this podcast, and you may have a network or a whole community. And if you don't, there are many ways to find one and options to do that. And please feel free to reach out to me if you need some assistance in finding some. And here's the real power move. Every single time you stop taking it personally, every time you refuse to let imposter syndrome call the shots, you and we take another massive step toward balance and equity in the world. Because this isn't just about confidence, it's about fully owning your place in this world unapologetically and rejecting a system that was never built with you in mind. And that is how I believe real change happens. One moment at a time, we shift from outsiders to members, from waiting for permission to taking what's always been ours by birthright. And this is how equity happens. And it starts with you and me and everyone. That, my podcast friends, is a wrap. This is such an important topic that next episode, I will be joined by Betsy Myers, a powerhouse of a woman in leadership, policy, and women's empowerment. Betsy's advised U.S. presidents, she's led major political campaigns nationally, and she has seen it all when it comes to imposter syndrome in leadership and the workforce and society. So absolutely join us for the next episode. And the quote for this episode is this. This is actually my favorite part of developing this podcast, is finding the appropriate quote to pull it all together. So this week's is this. It's a proverb. There is only so much a single drop of water can do on its own, though precious. Together, those drops can become a wave and make a considerable impact. So every time we say heck no to please don't take this personally moments, to people who diminish us, and to the imposter syndrome, we are saying yes to the power that was always ours. And we are not just making waves here. We're shifting the culture from imbalance to balance, from exclusion to equity, and from silence to undeniable presence. So until next time, be safe, be you, and thank you for joining me today. Remember, don't take it personally. Take action, because the era of evasion is over. See you next time.
Please don't say